So it was a really interesting period of time because it's been so many years ago. I was 19 years of age, and I had auditioned for the role in The City with a formidable Sean Cunningham and his crew, and Steve Miner as well. These names are coming back. I haven't spoken of them in a long time. And I was in between years at Lambda, London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts. So I had elected to stay in London. I was performing with my father at the London Palladium, and literally took a year off college to do that. We were going to go all over Europe and Asia and Australia, and he canceled. He wasn't feeling well. He canceled, and sadly he passed. So I stayed in London, and so it was really kind of new for me as I was coming back to the U.S. really for a break between years at Lambda. And so it was my second to third year, and I did the film there. I was looking to do a number of things. Actually, at a young age, I had representation, so I was kind of geared up for it. And I was ICM at the time, and I was actually going to do a play with Millicent Martin, if you remember her name, on Broadway. I had come back to audition for that, and I ended up auditioning for Friday the 13th. And again, remember that was, which has now become, it's a phenomenal success. It was a really low budget film, and I think Sean Cunningham had, if I can remember this correctly, he had done these kind of soft, kid-friendly, PG type, good Happy Days type films with very limited success. So he went the other end of the spectrum, and it turned it turned up to be a great success. He was really a warm, nice guy. I think Steve was there too. Steve Miner was there. I can't remember who he had, and it was in a nondescript kind of room, and they asked me to read a few pages, and I think they took me on a fly because it was I told them where I was going to school, and I was here, and I was auditioning for some other things, and it went really quickly. They said, we'd like you to come back and read with somebody else, and I can't really remember it. I just do remember that we were starting in a few weeks, and going to Blairstown, New Jersey, and it was great. I was lucky I got the part. I didn't have a place to stay in New York, and Kevin Bacon, who had a roommate who was actually studying at Juilliard, he was a piano player, and it was a residence hotel on Broadway somewhere. It was a dustbin, but it was great, and I was on a mattress. They gave me a mattress, which was super, and so I was there for for the duration in the city, and then once we got the part, I went on location. Well, it was a camp. It was in Blairstown, New Jersey. It's a bus ride away. I think I took the bus to get there, and it was great. It was like a kids' camp. It was a lake, and it's a long time ago, so it's hard to remember. I think we stayed on the camp there. I can't even remember. We might have stayed at some, Motel 6 kind of thing down the road. I just cannot remember. It was the summer of '79. Kevin Bacon was just finishing up with Days of Our Lives or Young and Restless. I think it was Young and Restless. And he still had a big following for the soap opera. That's how far back it goes. We kind of made it up along the way. I mean, I think the script was interesting. I love the idea with Jason it was interesting the way it rolled out. But I couldn't remember a line. We did make up things when I introduced the guitar, playing the guitar there, and other things. I don't think that was in the script to begin with, but but it was good. It was good. I remember Sean Cunningham as being a gracious and nice guy, and terrific in his direction, and very specific in what he wanted, and encouraging. Although I had grown up doing, Minute Maid commercials and Christmas shows and other things like that, I would say this was my first kind of commercial piece. I did a pilot called the Pony Express, and I can't remember whether that was before or after. I think that was after. So Friday the 13th was really kind of cutting my teeth on something about it. And I remember, just fondly that he was generous and helpful, and he knew what he wanted, and he had a good team. He had a very wide aperture. He wanted people to be themselves. He wanted it to be natural. He didn't want anything to be forced, but he had a story to tell, and that's what I remember about it. I think the realness in everybody. They were playing themselves. They were playing characters that they were very comfortable with, and we all kind of did that. And that's the one thing about Sean. He kind of brought that connectivity in. Play to your strengths. Don't try and be something you're not, and have fun. And we did, and and let the storyline actually create that horror, that anxiety, that being scared, being surprised, and that came out. Particularly, there were so many night shoots too. I was 19. Nothing was exhausting. We were having fun. So we were excited to get up and do shoots from midnight till 6. We saw the dailies. I can't. I wasn't the kind of person that was saying, "Gosh, I should have gotten more film here or film there." I wasn't thinking that at all. I was happy the way it came together, and I didn't know how it was going to be pieced together. Quite frankly, it was a film. I wasn't thinking about whether it was a low budget or high budget, or what was I getting paid, $600 a week, with everything thrown in. That was nirvana. That was great. I got to work with seasoned people. Kevin was already on TV and was doing a bunch of things, and I didn't know Adrian and Laurie and some of the others, and interestingly, it was really built around Tom Savini with Dawn of the Dead or something. He had done several films, and so he was in a way iconic around his trade, and so with the special effects. So I was excited about it. I was looking forward to it. Massively talented guy that really knew his chops. And he had his man Friday, Tasso, who was working with him, hand in glove. They were a great team. And he was great. He was a great visionary. And I think in terms of special effects, he was way ahead of his time. Of course, I had a big, I don't know if any of you guys remember this, or the other guys, Tom would remember this, is they had a mixture for blood, which if you've seen, they use a prosthetic, kind of a rubber or latex thing that would go over somebody's cheek or their eyes or their head. And I actually had an arrow in my eye, as you may remember, seen the film, and there were two types of this goop, this red blood, fake blood, and what they would do is they would kind of pump it up through underneath the latex, and it would come, streaming out, and for the effects. And Tom was brilliant at it. The point of view is you saw a closed door, and then the door opened, and then I was on the door. So I had to actually get up on a support that was nailed to the bottom of the door, and stand there. So I was pinned to the door by the arrow, arguably, but I was standing on the door as the door opens. So that took a while to get positioned there. So there was nobody there. It wasn't happening. There were two types of blood. One, so it wouldn't change color or turn, that was made out of a chemical that was a chemical used for developing called photoflow. And it also kept the color and the consistency of the blood thin and useful. And then there was the stuff that they would use on the skin and things like that didn't have, obviously, that strong lye chemical. So somehow the batches got mixed up. So off we go, and we're doing a night shoot. and it's at midnight, and they're pumping this stuff in underneath, and it's getting in my eye. And since there's no oxygen, I can't feel anything until about 4 in the morning. They took this off, and as soon as the oxygen hit, my eye was burning, burning, burning. And in the car I go. They took me to the local hospital, and I thought I would lose my eyesight for sure. I thought it was out because this chemical had been just steeping in the cornea. And they gave me the light in the eye, and I couldn't see the light. So it took a while, about 6 months. Yeah, it took a while because I could then see light, but then it was way out of focus. And you know, it happens. It happens. But it healed up. It healed up fine. And it was a low enough molarity in the chemical that I wouldn't have I wouldn't have lost the eye. Long story short, eyes perfect, 20/20, everything was fine, and they couldn't have been nicer and more gracious about it. But that was a scary moment. It was the horror within the horror film, but it was great, and all with super special effects. Adrienne was great. She was just a ton of fun, and she just embraced the character, and she was generous on camera, and we had a great time. Kevin Bacon, he was a pro. He was a pro then, and I followed him through his career, and he's been great. But we looked at the dailies together, and he was super. I can't remember if we had any. We might have had collaborative scenes with the whole group, but I can't remember whether we had a one-on-one. But great guy and a pro. Mark Nelson, funny, super guy. Laurie was wonderful and really sweet. And I'm sorry to have heard of her passing, which was, I guess, a while ago. Of course I remember Peter. Yeah, great, super guy. It was a good ensemble, and it was a happy group. I think we were shooting the whole thing 3 weeks, 4 weeks maybe. I can't remember. It was much more. I remember the Monopoly scene, which was kind of fun, or playing the guitar. I would bring my guitar around, and we would connect and play by the campfire, and it created that, strengthened that bond between all of us. I love the collaborative scenes, which were kind of cool, and the night scenes were fun. I mean, you could get into the getting scared because it was night, and you've been out there in the dark kind of working, so it's fun. I wasn't thinking low budget. They were just doing what they could do to get it done, and back then the dailies were going, the film was being taken in a station wagon. I think it was Sean's Vista Cruiser, and it was going up to the city to get developed and come back and look at the daily. So in the scheme of things, it went so quickly because it wasn't 16 weeks of going. I mean, I think it was budget. It was a tight budget. They went on, we were at camp for, I want to say I remember it was 3 weeks. It might have been a little bit more, but I think that was it. And we just blasted through it. I snuck into a movie theater, and not premiere, not anything. I just snuck into with a friend, and it was great. It was great to see it, and seeing it really full. So I seen some dailies along the way, but I really hadn't seen anything near the final cut until it was released. Seeing it with an audience was great because you could really sense how the tension built up and where people were scared and were top of their seats, and then of course Jason coming out of the water, that was big. So I think no one expected that as the titles went. It was, as I tell people back then, it was the first horror film I'd seen, was the one I'd done. I had no reference when I first came into it, but I was very surprised and humbled because, of course, I didn't have any interest in the film other than as a paid actor like everybody else, and happy to be that way. But the film was not just so much success, but all of us were kind of now very visible, having been really kind of put on the map based on this film that quickly became a cult kind of film. But the film cost $600 and something thousand to make. That's what I remember. Paramount had some other film in 1,500 theaters that somehow got axed. It didn't make it for some reason. I don't know what the film was. And now all of a sudden, Paramount has 1,500 spots that it needs to jam something in there. And it's summer. And, what are we going to do? And I can't remember actually when it opened, but I think it was summer. And sure enough, this was a spot. So Paramount, I think, bought the film for $3 million, if I can remember the numbers correctly, and then put about that much more into it, 2 to 3, to do the Mark Princeton ads and then it returned that in a 3-day weekend, and then went on. And again, these numbers are minuscule compared to what's going on today, but then did 10 times that amount in something like 8 or 9 weeks. So Sean did great. It was during that year after the release, and my kind of adopted parents were friends of my dad's, my mom's. Was Rosemary Clooney and Jose Ferrer, and of course they had been separated, divorced, but I was very close to Miguel Ferrer, whom you probably remember, and Maria and Rosie and I had performed together at the Palladium, as well as when she came back here and would come to New York and play different venues, and I was walking down 57th Street where Jose Ferrer had a apartment, not far from Carnegie Hall, and somebody came up, and he instinctively reached for her pen and paper, because he's been signing autographs since the 50s, and she said, no, it's for you, and that's when I knew that the film had definitely gotten out, and of course he's such a serious actor. He had 3 plays on Broadway, all done concurrently. And so many great films, and so it's the irony of all ironies. I did something with played some music in New York. I think at the Regency with Rosemary Clooney. I think this is some time ago, maybe 10 years ago. And there was a line outside that had nothing to do with Rosemary Clooney or the show. It was people around Friday the 13th. They were dressed up in costumes. It was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. And this is, it wasn't Halloween. It wasn't had anything to do with it. But they'd found out that I was going to be there. So it's interesting. The film has had a huge impact. I've gotten these letters from adults. I mean, not like teenagers and early 20s, but I got a sweet note from somebody who said, I've been following you for a long time, and I love Friday the 13th, and tell me about Bill. And he had done 3 tours in Iraq, So these are people that have been around, have been in the real world, have seen lots of things, and wanted an autograph and a picture and so on. I decided to go in a different direction. I loved acting and really enjoyed it. I did a couple of other things after Friday the 13th, but it was more television. I did a couple of pilots and episodics, and I did a thing for PBS called Private History of a Campaign That Failed. It was a Peter Hunt directed film for television about the Civil War, which is interesting. And so I decided to go back to, and I loved it, but I was interested in other things too, and the business end of it. So I decided to go back to business school, which is a real pivot. And as I finished business school, then I was attracted to finance and looking at businesses and the private equity world, which was just in its nascency, and so that's what I've been doing for a long time. I mean, there are a lot of great films that have been shot 40 years ago that I would have thought had a lot more legs than this one. But it's amazing. This is not just seasonal. I mean, people People are watching these things all the time, and it's one or even two generations when you think about it. Young kids that let's all have popcorn and watch Friday the 13th.